Oliver was on a business trip abroad when he became the victim of a terrorist attack. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. My mother-in-law said she and my father-in-law were at the embassy, desperately waiting for me to come and negotiate with them. Even my father, who hadn't called me in 10 years, suddenly dialed my number. He said he had contacts at the embassy and might be able to help repatriate Oliver. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, even Oliver's acquaintances all called to ask questions. But I, still in postpartum quarantine, hung up on every call with complete calm. After all, when Oliver saw on the news that his ex-war journalist was trapped in a conflict zone, he hadn't hesitated to leave me alone with a newborn daughter to go and look for her. At that moment, with amniotic fluid running down my legs, I had asked him, "Are you really sure you want to leave your wife and newborn daughter to go into a war-torn country? If you do this, Oliver, don't ask me to bear the consequences." Oliver didn't answer, but the hurried slamming of doors said everything. So, if he chose self-destruction, why should I be the one to save him? Chapter 1. Oliver loved watching the international news channel. I never understood why until I saw the broadcast 2 days ago. A Chinese war correspondent had been kidnapped while covering a report. The video lasted only a few seconds, but I recognized the woman. Julia, the most famous anchor on the channel. I was sitting on the sofa, heavily pregnant, eating melon, and feeling sorry for her. But Oliver suddenly threw the plate of fruit aside. When he stood up, he banged his knee against the coffee table. The impact was so strong that even I felt my belly tighten, but he didn't flinch. He stumbled into the kitchen like a zombie, trying to pour himself some water, but he pressed the hot water button, burned himself, and shattered the glass. He rushed to rinse his mouth with cold water, then stormed back into the bedroom and slammed the door shut. An hour later, he came out and said, "I have to go on an urgent trip." I crushed the melon between my fingers, but stood up calmly. "Oliver, I'm days away from giving birth. Do you really think this is a good time to leave? What if I go into labor? You know, my mother died giving birth to my brother. I'm terrified of childbirth. And you said you were excited to meet our daughter. Don't you want her first sight in this world to be of her father?" Oliver went pale, but he insisted, "This trip is important. I have to go. But I swear I'll be back before the birth." I smiled, even as contractions gripped me and my legs were soaked. "I'll let you go. But Oliver, let's be clear. Whatever consequences this trip brings, you'll carry them yourself. Don't expect me to take responsibility." Maybe the seriousness on my face made him tremble for a moment. "I swear I'll come back safe and sound," he said, as if making a solemn vow. He rushed into the bedroom, shoved a few things into his backpack, put on his shoes, and almost ran out. Just as he was about to cross the door, I couldn't help calling out, "Oliver, wait." He turned back impatiently. "Didn't you already give me permission? What now?" Clenching my teeth from the pain, I said coldly, "You forgot your passport." Dragging my fluid-soaked legs, I went into the bedroom. After handing him his passport, I also gave him a bank card. That card contained every salary Oliver had transferred to me over the 7 years of our marriage. When he saw what I was doing, his hand trembled slightly as he took the passport and card. His eyes even turned red. For a second, I thought he might stay. But instead, he slipped both into his bag and once again vowed, "Don't worry, I promise I'll be back before you give birth." Then he slammed the door shut and left in a rush. I listened to the hollow echo of the door and calmly dialed 120, calling an ambulance and the postpartum center staff. A man who hadn't even noticed my water had broken still had the audacity to make solemn promises. How ridiculous. Chapter 2. I met Oliver in a mountaineering club. At that time, I was under huge pressure at work. Obsessed with making money, I exhausted myself with endless overtime, only going hiking on weekends to recharge. Oliver joined the club a year after me. At first, he was just another member. But since we were always the first two to reach the summit, we gradually got to know each other. He worked in finance. I worked in technology. He loved climbing mountains. So did I. On the day we reached our 100th peak, he confessed his love. No romance, no tricks, just a simple sentence. "Nicole, let's be together." And I said yes. After all, my father had been the romantic one. To win my mother over, he had once set off fireworks that lit up half the city and even got arrested for it. But that hadn't stopped him, after marriage, from obsessively demanding a son. That obsession drove my mother to take Chinese medicine for years, and in the end, she died giving birth. So to me, romance didn't matter. Fancy gestures didn't matter. Stability mattered. And Oliver was the embodiment of stability. He was never late for a date. His gifts were never original, but he always brought something. He never offered to pick me up when it rained, but if I asked, he always came. So, in our 3rd year together, we got married. Life after marriage wasn't much different. I cooked, he washed the dishes. I did the shopping, he cooked the rice. Those calm, steady days made me believe Oliver was the perfect man for me. Until 3 years ago, when we attended the wedding of one of Oliver's college classmates. At the bachelor party, one of his friends got drunk, grabbed Oliver's hand, and broke down crying. Oliver, it breaks my heart to see you like this, like a walking corpse. I'm married now, I'm happy, but seeing you this way hurts me so much. If Julia hadn't gone abroad as a war correspondent, maybe you wouldn't have shut down and gone dark like this. Oliver looked at me immediately. Don't listen to him, he's drunk, he said. I smiled but said nothing. That same night, with intention, I told him, Oliver, I may have many flaws, but if there is one thing I know how to do, it is to cut love off without hesitation. He was standing in the shadows, so I could not see his face. But after that night, Julia disappeared completely from our lives. Until now. Chapter 3. Since I was not answering the phone, my mother-in-law rushed in just as I had finished breastfeeding my daughter at the postpartum center. Nicole, why don't you pick up? Don't you know your father is desperate at the embassy?
Come home with me right now.
We need Oliver's documents to take to the embassy. Without losing my calm, I answered with 6 numbers. 666313. She was stunned for a moment. While adjusting my baby's blanket, I explained, I'm in postpartum confinement. I can't move. That's the password to the house. You can take any documents you need. Her hands trembled visibly. Nicole, how can you be so cold? Oliver is in a war zone, and we don't even know if he's alive. Didn't you see the emergency message he sent to everyone? He said he was shot in the leg and is hiding in a stranger's house. I know what happened to him. I replied calmly. He sent me several messages before that one, but I didn't answer. My mother-in-law staggered at my words. The truth is, it hurt me, because during 7 years of marriage, she had treated me kindly, almost like a mother. But Oliver ruined it all. I handed her the video of the conversation I had with him the night he left. Mom, don't hate me for this. Oliver chose his own path. Her fingers shook as she took the phone. When she finished watching, she collapsed weakly to the floor. It took her several attempts before she could form words. Nicole, listen, there is nothing between Oliver and Julia. Even though the scar from my C-section still hurt, I couldn't stop myself from getting up to help her. Just like that night, when even after my water broke, I was the one who handed him his passport and his bank card. I know there is nothing physical between them, I told her. But Oliver abandoned his wife and newborn daughter to go after Julia. That proves our family means nothing to him. He was willing to let my daughter grow up without a father, to leave me a widow all for her. Now he must face the consequences. My mother-in-law was left speechless. Perhaps even she could no longer find words to defend him. Finally, she stood up, trembling, and said, Take care of yourself during confinement. I'm leaving. But just before she reached the door, I stopped her. Mom, when you and Dad can this week, I'd appreciate it if you moved out of my apartment. She turned slowly. Can't you wait a little longer? I shook my head. Did Oliver wait to take me to the hospital before going abroad? I just want to settle everything about our property before he comes back. Chapter 3. I hadn't answered the phone. I had just finished breastfeeding my daughter at the postpartum center when my mother-in-law rushed in through the door. Nicole, why don't you answer me? Don't you know your father is going mad at the embassy? You have to come with me right now and bring Oliver's documents to the embassy. I calmly replied with 6 numbers. 666313. She was perplexed. I carefully adjusted my baby's blanket before explaining, I'm in postpartum confinement. That's the password to the house. You can go yourself and take whatever you need. Her hands began to tremble. Nicole, how can you be so cold? Oliver is in a war zone, and we don't even know if he's alive. Didn't you see the message he sent to everyone begging for help? He said he was shot in the leg and now he's hiding in a stranger's house to avoid bullets. I know you're in confinement, but this is an emergency. Can't you at least come with me to the embassy to find out what's happening?
Her whole body shook as she spoke.
But I remained calm. I know exactly what's happening with Oliver. Before sending that message to everyone, he wrote to me several times asking for help. I didn't answer. She staggered as if pushed. Looking at her face, I felt a pang of guilt. During the 7 years I was married to Oliver, she treated me very well, almost like a mother. But now Oliver had destroyed all of that. I pulled out the video of our conversation that night and handed it to her calmly. Mom, don't call me cruel. This was Oliver's choice. She took the phone with trembling fingers. After watching it, she collapsed to the floor. It took her several attempts before she could speak. Nicole, listen to me, there's nothing between Oliver and Julia. Despite everything, I couldn't ignore her. Though my C-section scar burned painfully, I got out of bed and helped her up. Just like that night when Oliver left the house knowing my water had broken, and still, I was the one who gave him his passport and bank card. I know there was nothing physical between them. But the fact that Oliver abandoned his wife and newborn daughter to chase Julia in a war zone shows me that this home never mattered to him. He would rather leave his daughter fatherless and make me a widow just to follow her. Now he must bear the consequences. Her face went pale at the sound of my icy tone. She opened her mouth several times but couldn't say a word. Maybe even she couldn't justify it anymore. At last, she gave up. She stood up, her body still trembling. Take care of yourself during confinement. I'm leaving. When she walked out the door, she looked as if she had aged overnight. Even though my heart ached, I called out before she left. Mom, tell me what day this week you and Dad can move out of my apartment. She turned back unwillingly. Can't you wait a little longer? I shook my head. Did Oliver wait to take me to the hospital when my water broke before catching that flight? I just want everything, our marriage and our property, settled before he returns. Chapter 4. Perhaps my words extinguished the last bit of hope in her, because she left the postpartum center trembling and defeated. I let out a long sigh and lay back down. My C-section wound began to bleed again after helping her up. Of course it hurt, but I simply called the doctor to change the bandage without losing my composure. That night, my father burst in angrily. What is the meaning of this? Why did you send a message saying that you and Oliver are getting divorced? I didn't even remember until he mentioned it. After my mother-in-law left, I had picked up my phone to watch a series, but the notifications never stopped. Oliver's colleagues, cousins, friends, everyone was messaging me, asking about him. It was driving me insane. So I did exactly what Oliver had done abroad. I sent a message to everyone.
Sorry.
Oliver and I will divorce as soon as he returns. I have no information about his situation on the battlefield or whether he was wounded by explosives. For more details, please contact his parents. As I expected, the phone finally fell silent. I was lost in thought when my father, seeing that I did not answer him, kicked my bed. So selfish, aren't you? Your husband is still trapped in a war zone, maybe dead, and you already want a divorce? Is this how I raised you to be so cold and ungrateful? Do you know the shame I'm suffering with the family? They're drowning me in their criticism. I smirked mockingly. So, according to you, I should drag my freshly operated body around, searching for contacts to save a man who chose to go after his ex-girlfriend, knowing there was a war?
Dad, men understand each other.
Do you really think Oliver would appreciate everything I did for him? My father trembled with rage. I knew exactly why. My mother had health problems and could not have another child, but my father, obsessed with having a son, tricked her with lies and betrayal. And the result? My mother died in childbirth with the baby. Afterwards, he regretted it, but what good did that do? The following year, he already had a new wife. And the year after that, a new son. Yes, men know each other well. Oliver would have two paths. Either he would die in combat, or, like in a cheap drama, he would fall in love with his ex, that war reporter, between bombs and blood. Even if nothing happened between them, could I stay in that marriage? Could I accept a man who was willing to die for another woman? If the end was going to be divorce, I would rather suffer less now. My father and I had never been close. He only came because if his son-in-law was in trouble and he didn't show up, it would look bad. So, after scolding me a few more times, he left the postpartum center. Not once did he ask if my wound hurt or if his granddaughter was okay. But I didn't feel hurt, only furious. Because in the end it was his shouting that woke up my baby, who now cried uncontrollably. Chapter 5. After that, my life finally returned to calm. I put the house Oliver and I shared up for sale at a low price. I had everything inside the marital home thrown away. Oliver's personal belongings I packed and sent to his parents' house. Other things like the crib, the stroller, and the baby clothes he had bought for our daughter I also discarded. A father who does not love his daughter does not deserve to leave her even a single keepsake. Before selling the house, I asked my mother-in-law if she wanted to buy my half. She hesitated, but I calmly advised her, "Mom, you should rent for now. Save the money from the sale and your savings. If Oliver comes back crippled or paralyzed, you will need resources to survive." Her face turned purple with anger. My father-in-law, furious, tried to slap me, but I remained serene. "Dad, didn't you just spend $1 million to pull strings and move contacts? You're only beginning to see hope of bringing Oliver back. Don't ruin it by going to jail for hitting me. Mom and Oliver still need you." With that, I asked the staff at the center to escort them out. Everything was going according to plan. Everything except one thing: the bank statement the lawyer sent me, an unshakable thorn. It turned out that during 7 years, Oliver had been making regular donations to poor children abroad. Some donations were 3,000 yuan, others 50,000, even 100,000. In total, more than $1 million. All to Project Q, an international initiative led by Julia, his ex. All these years Oliver and I had lived with separate finances. Even during my pregnancy, we kept it that way. He paid his share. I paid mine and the baby's. I thought I was saving. But No had given it all away to foreign charities. If at least he had donated to children in our own country, I wouldn't be so angry. Here there are still millions of people who don't have enough to eat. And him pitying foreign children. He didn't even buy an apartment in a good school district for his own daughter. But he emptied his savings to support his ex's charity. Whatever affection I had left died completely. And just before I left the postpartum center, Oliver was finally repatriated. I sighed with relief, at least his parents hadn't been swindled out of that $1 million. But right after, another sharp pain pierced my chest. I quickly composed myself. I put on makeup, dressed up, and calmly went to the airport. Everything was already divided. It was time to hand him the divorce papers. When I arrived, the waiting hall was full. Relatives, friends, Oliver's parents all were present. As soon as they saw me, they all looked at me strangely. I ignored them. Shortly after, Oliver appeared, pushed in a wheelchair by airport staff. Beside him was a dark-skinned woman, clearly sunburned. They looked very close. As they came down from the tunnel, she tripped on a step. Alarmed, Oliver immediately jumped up from the wheelchair. "Be careful walking, you were just shot in the leg." Watching the scene, I clenched my fist without thinking. In 7 years of marriage, Oliver had never reacted that way with me. If I tripped or hurt myself, he would only frown and continue with whatever he was doing. So this was the lively Oliver his friends had spoken about. Another stab of pain tore through my chest. And before I could react, Oliver was already in the middle of the crowd, hugging his parents tightly. "Mom, Dad, forgive me. I was a bad son. I made you suffer." His disappearance had left them devastated. They wept bitterly in his arms. The scene was touching. Many eyes turned misty. When the embrace ended, Oliver finally looked at me. His eyes turned red instantly. I walked closer, but he didn't notice my flat stomach nor the coldness in my face. It was everyone else who cast strange looks. Oliver took my hand, letting tears fall onto the back of it. "Nicole, I kept my promise. I came back alive." His tears were warm, and they disgusted me. Taking advantage of the gesture of touching his hand, I used it to wipe them away. "Good that you came back." Then, with complete calm, I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. "I need to get back to take care of the baby. Would it suit you to sign this now?" Chapter 6. Oliver's eyes widened in disbelief, but I spoke with absolute composure. "Oliver, I warned you that night. If you chose to go to that country at war, you had to be ready to bear the consequences. As I spoke, I lowered my gaze to his leg still wrapped in bandages stained with dark, dried blood. Not just to accept that you almost lost your leg in an explosion. Not just to accept that your parents went sleepless for nights, breaking themselves apart trying to pull strings and bring you home. But also to accept that you lost your wife, your daughter, and the home we once had. Oliver, you are a man. And a man keeps his word. His whole body began to shake at my words. Perhaps even he had never imagined that I could be so resolute. In our 7 years of marriage, I had never screamed, never made a scene. If he didn't give me money, I never asked. If he didn't do the chores, I did them myself. Even when he asked for space, to sleep 2 nights a week in his studio, I allowed it. He was convinced that I loved him madly. And I did. Madly. Otherwise, why would someone like me who feared marriage and motherhood ever have chosen this life? Why would I have become a mother? But Oliver destroyed the only moment of courage I ever had in my life. He dragged me down the same painful path my mother once walked. I don't hate Oliver. After all, it was my decision. I chose him. I bear the consequences. But that doesn't mean I'm a fool who forgives everything. It was already too much to let him keep another woman in his heart while being married to me. Just then, in that tense silence, Julia rushed forward. Sister-in-law, there's nothing between Oliver and me. You're misunderstanding. I smiled mockingly. Whether I misunderstood or not doesn't matter. But if you don't want everyone else to misunderstand you too, how about returning that million? As I spoke, I pulled out Oliver's bank statements. Here are the transfers he made to your foundation over the years. They add up to more than 1 million yuan. That money is part of marital property. Even if it was a donation, I have the legal right to claim it. If I take this to court, your foundation won't come out clean either, will it? I let out another sarcastic smile. And you Olivers stop calling me sister-in-law. Call him Oliver G if you want, but don't involve me in that. It disgusts me. I looked back at Oliver, whose face was even paler. It seems you're not in condition to sign the divorce papers today. So I won't bother you further. Get well soon. Hopefully, you'll be able to come limping to sign them. Ignoring the strange looks around me, I turned and walked out of the airport with my head held high. But only I knew that beneath that proud posture, my nails dug into my palms, so hard they pierced like knives. They say divorce is like tearing off your skin. And it's no lie. Some people can't endure it. And I'm among the few who can. Chapter 7. That same day, after handing Oliver the divorce papers, I returned home without stopping. But my baby, still so tiny, cried with her face red from exhaustion because she could not smell the familiar scent of her mother. My heart clenched sharply. I lifted my blouse in desperation and began to nurse her. Feeling the warmth of her little body against mine, the tears I had been holding back finally escaped. I'm sorry, Sophia, I'm sorry for bringing you into this world without a father. But don't worry, my love. Mama will give you all the love in the world, 100%. After that, I did not actively seek to know anything about Oliver. Even so, I heard that he ended up in the ICU with sepsis at risk of losing his leg entirely. Because my mother-in-law came several times to beg me. Nicole, please, I'm begging you. Go see Oliver at the hospital. He won't stop murmuring your name. And Sophia, please, just once, bring her to see him, even for a moment. I stayed firm and refused. Not out of cruelty, but because Sophia had recently caught a cold. Hospitals are full of people. Oliver had just returned from abroad. What if he carried some contagious disease not yet detected? I would not risk my daughter's health just to ease Oliver's guilt. Even if he had not gone abroad, even if he were merely sick, I would not bring a 1-month-old baby to a hospital. And besides, if he had never gone, none of this would have happened. Because I stayed firm, my mother-in-law looked older and more worn each time she came. I did feel some pity for her. But all I could do was hold her hand and comfort her, telling her that Oliver had a lucky star and would make it through. My father-in-law was not so patient. He showed up several times, yelling and pounding the door until it shook. Each time, my sick baby was terrified, crying until she vomited milk from fright. Even the nanny could no longer stay silent. This family has no shame. The baby is so tiny, She needs peace and quiet. And yet they come causing a scene again and again. Their son went abroad to chase his mistress, got himself shot, ended up crippled, and now they want to guilt-trip you with morality to make their only granddaughter visit him? Visit what? Let him die. The night you called me and I ran to your house, I saw you lying on the floor in a pool of blood and amniotic fluid, writhing in pain, and no one else was there. It broke my heart to see you like that. If you were my daughter, I would have torn that family apart already. I said nothing in response to her words. But I did think to myself that this house was no longer a home. Later, in the room, after a long silence, I asked her, "Does your family live in the countryside? Could I stay there for a year? I promise I'll pay rent." The nanny looked a little surprised. But seeing my situation, she immediately replied, "No rent needed. You can come. Only the conditions aren't the best." I'm afraid that I gave a bitter smile. Worse than here? I doubt it. The air is clean, there are fewer people, the countryside will be better for Sophia. She agreed, without hesitation. That very day, we started packing. The next morning, we left early for her village. Chapter 8. Although the nanny insisted I not pay rent, I immediately transferred 50,000 yuan as a year's rent. And at that moment, I felt especially grateful that I had never depended on Oliver. Otherwise, I never could have left with such firmness. As I carried bags with the nanny toward the underground parking lot, I opened the door and found Julia standing right at the entrance. She glanced at my suitcases and frowned slightly. Oliver is still in the hospital between life and death, and instead of taking care of him, you're moving out? Her tone carried judgment and reproach like a saint. Just seeing her made my stomach turn. Weren't you the one who dragged him into this mess? And now you come here from your moral altar to judge me? Julia, having a little shame never hurt anyone. Try picking it up off the floor. Julia's face twisted. How resentful you are. I told you many times already. There's nothing between Oliver and me. I didn't even know he was coming to find me at the front. I let out a sarcastic laugh. You had no contact with him? Really? Then how did he know your foundation was short of funds? And what a coincidence, right? He always donated exactly when you needed it most. Julia's face went even paler. I cut her off mercilessly. If you don't know what to say, then don't. No one ever said a famous war journalist couldn't also be a homewrecker. People have many faces. I get it. She turned even paler. Please don't make things up. I never interfered in your marriage. I never wanted to. I smiled coldly. What a coincidence. I never wanted to interfere between you and Oliver either. So, do whatever you want. Oh, and if Oliver wakes up, tell him from me. Unless it's about the divorce, don't even think of contacting me. With that, I pushed her aside and entered the elevator. The nanny followed behind, carrying the baby, her eyes so wide and sharp it seemed like lasers were shooting from them. Chapter 9. After that, I never paid attention to Oliver or Julia again. I changed my mindset and moved with the nanny, bringing my daughter with me. Her home was simple but peaceful. Her husband worked away, and her son was already in university. Each day I walked with my daughter in my arms, fed chickens, raised ducks, and honestly, those days were some of the lightest and happiest of my life. It wasn't until my daughter turned 1 that I returned to the city I had once shared with Oliver, and for the first time in 12 months, opened my WeChat account. As soon as I turned on my phone, messages flooded in like a bomb, completely overwhelming it. I deleted everything without reading. Once calm, I wrote to Oliver, "I'm back. Let me know when you're available so we can go sign the divorce at the civil registry." He didn't reply. Just when I thought perhaps he really had died, someone knocked on the door. I froze. I signaled to the nanny to take the baby into the room. When the door closed, I went to open it. And there was Oliver. I was in shock. He looked older, worn down. When I saw he was missing a leg, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. I didn't want to let him in, but seeing him with a crutch, so vulnerable, I gave in. I stepped aside. His eyes immediately reddened. He tried to speak several times, but I stopped him. Sit first. There's no rush. Once he settled on the sofa, I politely served him tea and a plate of fruit. The steam of the tea floated between us like those 7 years of marriage. Quiet afternoons on the balcony, him reading, me playing Go, peaceful silence. As always, he was the one to break it. Nicole, I've missed you so much. I know I hurt you, but please don't divorce me. I can't lose you. His voice trembled. Even the empty leg of his pants shook with each sob. I already knew divorce wouldn't be easy. I drank my tea calmly. I already have enough caring for our daughter. I won't also take care of a cripple. I'm being harsh but honest. His face went pale.
I didn't stop.
I know you're in trouble, but I'm not a charity. I'm under no obligation to save you. The only thing I can offer is a more favorable split of the assets. In the original agreement, I kept 60% and you 40%. If you want, we can switch at 60 for you, 40 for me. His lips trembled. Are you really going to be that cruel? I was in the ICU, and you disappeared with the baby. I almost died, Nicole. I smiled without emotion. I didn't know. And why should I have? I told you when you left for abroad you would bear the consequences. And you accepted. He clenched his fists. But you didn't say you'd divorce me. I let out a bitter laugh. I pulled out my phone and showed him the video from that night. We didn't argue, but in the video, you could see how I bled nonstop. When Oliver left, the floor was marked with trails of blood. So obvious. And he didn't even notice. Yet now he came blaming me. When it ended, he collapsed on the sofa. I took another sip of tea. I can compromise a little more. You can see our daughter once a month. If, when she grows, she wants to see you more, we'll discuss it. But you're disabled. Your old job in finance won't take you back. And society is not kind to people like you. Don't dream of custody. You were the one who abandoned her. Don't flaunt fatherhood now. Also, considering your situation, I won't ask for child support. I paused and softened my tone. Oliver, I just want a peaceful divorce. No drama. I truly loved you. Even though it ended badly, I'd like us at least to be friends. At least in front of our daughter. His face completely crumbled. Perhaps he understood there was no turning back. His voice shook. All right. Tomorrow at 9, I'll meet you at the civil registry. And he left leaning on his crutch. Just after he left, my phone rang. Seeing the contact, I hesitated. It was Oliver's brother's wife. We knew each other, but rarely spoke. I answered curiously. My friend, you're finally back. You're my idol. I frowned. She continued, you have no idea. After you left, Oliver's treatment cost thousands per day. His parents sold their house, asked my husband and everyone they knew for money to save his life. If you hadn't left, you would have been crushed under millions of debt. And that Julia, at first so devoted bathing him, feeding him, but not even a month had passed before she ran away claiming it was for work.
Lies.
She simply didn't want to care for a cripple. And when everyone was raising money for Oliver's treatment, do you know how much Julia contributed? Nothing. Zero. And to think Oliver had almost died for her. I smiled bitterly. I had known it would end this way all along. But regardless, as long as Oliver didn't try to burden me with his medical debts, we could end things peacefully. And fortunately, he still had some shred of decency. The next day at the registry, he never mentioned his debts. He used the same agreement, me 60, him 40. I didn't reject it. Why would I turn down easy money? When we came out with a divorce certificate, his eyes turned red. He wanted to speak several times until at last he asked, "Can I see our daughter today?" "Of course," I replied. Chapter 10. That same day, I asked the nanny to bring my daughter downstairs. When Oliver saw her, he broke down crying until his eyes were bloodshot. He turned to me. If I hadn't left that day, would we have had a completely different life? I smiled faintly. Of the rest, I'm not sure. But our daughter would have had a father. Oliver wept again at my words. But I pretended not to see it. I only allowed him to be with our daughter for half an hour. Then I told him calmly, it's almost time for her nap. Better go for today. Come back next month. Oliver clenched his fists but said nothing. After that, he began coming punctually every month to play with her for a little while. Sometimes he asked to take her to see her grandparents. I always refused. Until she turned 6. Then I let her decide if she wanted to go or not. She went with him only once. And she never went again. Because during that visit, my father-in-law spent the entire meal insulting me. After that, my daughter didn't want to return. And Oliver's visits also grew less and less frequent. especially after he remarried when our daughter was Tento, a woman with little education who apparently already had a son. From then on, he barely came to see his daughter. Is he happy? I don't know. But my daughter and I are. On vacations we flew abroad. We traveled the world. Sometimes I asked her if she blamed me for growing up without a father. And she would always look at me with annoyance. Do I lack dads? Every now and then you bring home some handsome uncle to cheer me up. I'm already worried I'll stay single because my standards are too high.